Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Let's go over to Clemson. So a fair amount of change for Clemson.
Yes.
This offseason, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Play the ding here for that one.
Please.
Because getting rid of Brandon Streeter, bringing in Garrett Riley, DJU transfers out, Cade Klubnik, now the guy. A lot of high-profile stuff to talk about.
Sure.
Clemson also has not followed the lead of its peers in the conference around college football at that top tier. They're just not doing the transfer thing. They really could have used a few transfers of the receiver position.
Sure.
Because
yeah.
That's kind of been the weakness, right?
Yeah.
The last couple of years, among other things, there's been inconsistencies that maybe you can get into. But I would have thought for sure receiver would have been ripe to bring somebody in. Surely with all the talent around whoever at Clemson, it's got to be an attractive spot. They just have not done that. So for me, I still have questions about the receiver position. It's a broader question about Dabo Swinney and how he approaches the transfer portal, but that's not anything new. Where are you at with Clemson? What is your point of fascination there?
By the way, receiver, typically a position you can get much better at just because of the sheer number of bodies who play receiver and enter the portal, quality guys. You see, A.D. Mitchell going to Texas and Keon Coleman at Florida State, who we just mentioned, all over the place. You can improve quickly at receiver.
You can improve quickly, and in Clemson's heyday, and I don't say heyday as a way to kind of imply that they're past it. Clemson's still a top-tier team, but when I think we were more comfortable talking about Clemson as a national title team, that caliber team, they were loaded with receivers, NFL caliber receivers. Sure. I just don't know if they're there. They could emerge, but at time of recording, late July, I'm not sure I know their names.
It's also Dabo's position group historically, right? That he came up as a receivers coach, and typically when the head coach takes a special interest in a position because of where he coached as an assistant, that's a strength of a team. And so, sure, Bo Collins is back and he was beat up, and it's Antonio Williams and Jake Brenningstool. Like, they've had guys, but did you watch Community, by the way? The NBC
a little
show
bit here and there.
With Joel McHale. Okay, so there was a character on that show called Magnitude. I don't know if you remember Magnitude. He had a catchphrase, pop, pop, okay? I have the fascinating thing, I'm right there aligned with you, is pop at receiver. Because that's what's been lacking for this team. Now, you talk about, look, DJU struggled and the offense took a step back and the offensive line wasn't where it was at the best of where Clemson was recently. And while they had good dudes on defense, there wasn't star power at corner in the same way. We saw Wake really take it to them. You could pick on Clemson a little bit in man coverage these past couple seasons. But to me, right there with you, pop at receiver, and it works nicely, the magnitude of the plays on offense, because this was a team that was still relatively efficient on offense. They improved last year under Brandon Streeter, but they weren't anywhere near where they were in the Jeff Scott, Tony Elliott offenses that were really humming. And that, to me, is the big thing that needs to happen, because I think the offensive line is going to be good. I think Cade Klubnik will likely take a nice step forward in Garrett Riley's offense. We'll get into him in a second. But it should be a balanced offense, given where Garrett Riley was last season, with probably more interesting star power at receiver and running back overall. But who is scared of the Clemson receiver room today? I would say
I don't know.
Not many people in the ACC. Now, there's not a lot of terrific secondaries, and I think Garrett Riley is creative, and he will figure out ways to generate bigger plays than where they were last year with DJU and Brandon Streeter. But I don't think it's, all right, now they're TCU. I don't think it's turnkey like that for Clemson. So that's why I have Florida State ahead of them, because I just think there's more proven excellence on offense. Defense should be good. They're good at linebacker. They're very good at safety. There's a lot of, I think Xavier Thomas is 37 years old and he's still playing. There's a lot to like about the defense holding up its end of the bargain, not where they were under the best of Brent Venables, not where they were when they had 4, 5, 6, first round-ish talent on the defensive line, but that can be overcome with big plays on offense. And for the good of entertaining TV, I hope it happens for Clemson at receiver, and guys step up, younger guys step up, because it still seems to be sorely needed that Clemson doesn't have an obvious Quentin Johnston like TCU had, or even Tay Barber, who was terrific last year for TCU. They'll be creative, but the name that emerges, I still think is TBD.
Yeah, and look, part of, I think, DJU's struggles at Clemson, some of the inconsistency came from the fact that receivers didn't get open.
Yeah.
Either didn't get open, or the 50-50 jump balls that Clemson had grown really accustomed to throwing under Trevor Lawrence, and when they were maybe a little bit more successful, that play was not there. They didn't have the guys who could go up and win those types of balls, and it came back to bite them. Now, maybe they'll find it this year. I don't know. Perhaps the Garrett Riley system will unlock some matchup potential that gives them that arrow back in the quiver. I don't know. But I know it can't all be on Will. Don't call me Bill Shipley.
Yeah.
I like Bill Shipley. We're going to go Bill this year. Ooh. I like him. I think he is crazy bright. I think he is probably, outside of your boy Trey Benson, the best running back in the conference. Not really much of a question in my mind.
Okay.
But he can only do so much. So whoever that target is out wide, he's going to have to step forward and announce himself relatively early on, so that Cade Klubnik has that target, and so that Clemson can maybe be a little bit more vertical in the passing game. That would be nice. The other thing that I would add about Clemson, Dan, is you mentioned the defense. I think you're right to point out that the defense is going to be very, very solid. I think it's a pretty tough schedule this year.
I was going to say, the back half especially, it is loaded.
It is pretty tough. We already talked about the Week 4 game against Florida State. They've got that one at home, which is a nice spot for Clemson. But there's at least one tough game each month with a marquee opponent. They've got Florida State in September. They've got Notre Dame as you get into, I guess, October, and then North Carolina later in the year. All those games are at home, which is nice for Clemson. But at South Carolina to close out the year, that'll be a tester, a revenge spot for Clemson after losing last year. There's also a few traps on here, right? I look at Syracuse on the road a week after Florida State. Who knows what frame of mind Clemson will be in after that game.
Well, Dabo and Syracuse have some baggage together, yeah.
They got some baggage, yeah, and that's my point. So, I don't know. There's a lot here with Clemson. I would be inclined to say that Clemson is more fascinating, though I think Florida State is better, because there are just more storylines to me, more things in flux on the Clemson side, if I'm being honest from my chair. But both teams for sure, I think, have earned their right as the top two, at least perceived top two in the conference.
By the way, it's at Miami, at NC State, and Notre Dame consecutively on this schedule, correct?
Yeah, right.
And then it's North Carolina a week before South Carolina, to whom they lost last year, correct?
That's right.
Okay. That's, if Clemson has patched up the holes, it'll show itself to be pretty impressive back half of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would not at all put it past Dabo and this offense, and especially this defense, to just rip through this schedule. I could totally see a world in which that happens.
Sure.
I don't know if I'd want to touch the over 10, if indeed it is 10. In our grand total game, we only did have games, so it's going to be one or the other. You don't have that option for a push. But in the real world here, 10 I probably wouldn't touch. There's just not enough wiggle room there.
Okay. But quarterback and defense in a good spot. That's my rubric.